Okay, we can finally move on from Merton strain theory and Agnew's general strain theory, but we're going to talk about how the victim and what really victimology actually is, and how that impacts or what role that plays in crime. So, and also it impacts our investigations too when we have to investigate a crime. So first, I want to go ahead and define what a victim actually is. So a victim, according to the criminal justice system, is described as any person who has experienced, it's usually considered loss, injury, or hardship, and due to illegal actions of another individual, group, or organization. So the best way to say it is, in essence, I know I broke it down in these bullet points, but if you say it all at once, it is the actual definition of a victim according to the criminal justice system is any person who has experienced loss, injury, hardship due to illegal actions of another individual, group, or organization. So loss could actually be something that was taken from you, such as in a situation of theft or of robbery. Um, that's simple examples. Injury, pretty obvious in terms of physical injury. That could be battery, and sexual assault would factor into that. Rape. Those are both injury type cases. Hardship. Uh, Anything that is basically due to becoming a victim, and is it emotional hardship? I mean, that's an option that you have to consider, is how does it affect the individual emotionally to be a victim of a crime, even if they weren't physically harmed. How does that impact them, from an emotional standpoint? And obviously, the same things can be said for physical harm as well. And how does that affect them? Also, uh, if you happen to have your vehicle stolen, or something happens to where you can't actually work, okay, you're a victim because you miss out on that work that you can't go to. You can't go to work, so therefore you lose out on the financial aspect of things. So therefore, that's hardship in a different way. It is not doesn't go under loss or hardship, or excuse me, loss or injury, as mentioned before, but it goes on to under the hardship of something that you've had to deal with. And the last part is an illegal action. So yeah, in society, can we be considered, oh, you're a victim of circumstances, etc.? That's different. We're talking about a victim who of an actual illegal action, and it could be another individual. Those are pretty easy. You guys already know most of those, or those are probably the first things that come to mind. Groups or organizations, and especially with hate crimes anymore, that would be a factor. Also, whenever we talk about fraud, embezzlement, um, these different innocence Ponzi schemes that come up, uh, fraud, all those are things that can be done either by an individual or group. And then, you can be a victim of any of those. So not to belabor the point, we're going to go ahead and move on. I think you all should have a good understanding of what a victim actually is, and how it can be more than just, the simple side of it. Okay. um, So this idea of victim comes across as, victim precipitation. Um, we call things precipitating factors. Okay, so crime that is partially facilitated or caused by the victim is what we consider victim precipitation. Meaning, oh, you're at hypothetically, you're old enough to legally go into a bar, and you get into an argument with someone, and you're the one who actually encourages them to fight you, or you initiate the problem, or you start harassing someone, um, and they fight back. Though you are a victim of battery, if they punch you, for example, um, you are the one that initiated the problem in the first place. So therefore, that's called victim precipitation, or at least an example of victim precipitation. Also, you have things like, okay, as it lists here, anytime you partake in usage, drug usage, alcohol consumption, being around people you don't know, uh, and I'll get to naivety in a little bit. But anytime you alter your state of mind and your ability to think clearly, that is going to make you more likely to be a victim because you aren't aware of your surroundings. You're not thinking clearly, not just about the circumstances. You aren't going to be yourself. You're more vulnerable mentally, physically, and emotionally in all of those situations. For example, you're on campus, because I know this happens, unfortunately. You're on campus, or at least you go to a party that may be off campus at a house. Uh, hey, if you want to stay on campus, go to Sigma Pi. But I don't want to try to throw them under the bus sometimes. So let's just say you go to a house party. Simply by being there where there's alcohol consumption that can affect your, and probably um, drugs will also be there in a lot of different parties. But needless to say, not only is it affecting you and your judgment, anybody else that's there and partaking is going to also be affected. So that makes you more likely to be a victim, even if you don't want to be a victim. Unfortunately, I know a couple friends from when I was in college that one of them, for example, uh, she was a teammate of mine, and it was after I had already graduated. She was a couple years younger. She went to a party on campus grounds, and uh, I assumed that she'd probably had too much to drink, whatever. She said that she was tired. And so they took her to, in the way that the place is set up at my college, they were more like little suites and apartments as opposed to dorms. So she had her friends take her to a nearby suite in the same area, but supposedly no one was there. But then not too long after that, she said she kind of woke back up. And when she woke up, she uh, found a guy who was in the middle of a sex act and was raping her while she was, whether she was asleep or passed out, that doesn't matter. Um, she had no desire to get involved with anything like that, but it happened. Just like I have another friend who did not go out with friends, but then went to. They said, "Oh, we're going to go to another." We went to another house or another place location. Can you come get us? And so once again, this female, she it's a different friend, but she goes and to pick her friends up. Someone answers the door, welcomes her in essence, and then closes the door and locks it behind her, hits her over the head. And then the next thing she remembers is the next morning she wakes up out in the middle of some woods with her pants and underwear down around her ankles. So those are all things that I'm not trying to freak everybody out, but that is something that can happen. And unfortunately, guys can be victims. We're more so victims of violent violent crimes such as battery and things like that, as opposed to anything sexual. But as far as that's concerned, there are 4 factors to victimization: age, sex, aptitude, precipitation. So what I'm going to talk about there real quick, age is essentially, it depends on, your vulnerability. Your older population tends to be more vulnerable, just like your kids are more vulnerable than, say, middle-aged adults. Okay. Sex depends on the crime. As I alluded to earlier, men are more likely to be victims of violent crimes, whereas females are more likely to be victims of um, sex crimes. Aptitude, mental and physical aptitude, meaning, how well do you think, or do you have any physical or mental disabilities? Those are things that make a difference. Unfortunately, we have people who are mentally ill that are taken advantage of, and become victims without obviously desiring that. And precipitation is simply going back to that victim precipitation based on our own lifestyles, lifestyle choices, and also based on our everyday activities that can make us more likely to be a victim. So I'm going to go into more detail in the next video, but I'm going to kind of cut it off there. And I will see you then.